UFC. This coming weekend, the UFC has UFC Fight Night Fiziev versus Gamrot going down at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, headlined by two notable lightweights, Rafael Fiziev taking on Mateusz Gamrot. Before we talk about the handful of fights, looks like we're going to talk about 5 fights on this card. Any other fights or fighters that you guys want to quickly touch on and spotlight for our fans?
To be honest, like, the prelims are decent. You could probably watch all of them and probably enjoy yourself. I mean, you've got a lot of good opportunities there to see some fights that are pretty decent to watch. Mizuki Inoue and Hannah Goldie are fighting. Muhammad Usman and Jay Collier are fighting. That fight could be absolutely amazing. That fight could also be a fucking snooze fest, if we're being 100% honest. It really depends on how that fight goes. But there is the possibility for both ends of the spectrum on that one. You got Malkoun versus Cody Brundridge, which is another beast of a fight. Tim Means versus Andre Fialho, another great fight. I mean, there's some good ones on here. We're not going to go through all of them in depth. We're just going to stick to the main card for this one. But it's on paper, there are some decent potential fights on here, or some potential for some decent fights on here for this upcoming weekend in the prelims.
I feel like you named every fight other than my one favorite fight that's on the prelims, which is Dan Argueta and Miles Johns.
By the time I realized I had named all of the fights, I was like, I got to leave them one.
I also like Means and Fialho. That should be a real scrap.
Yeah.
But, Argueta and Johns is a fun fight. Argueta is a guy who I don't know that I necessarily believed in when he made it to the UFC. But his last performance against Ronnie Lawrence was super impressive. So I'm very interested to see what he can get done against Miles Johns.
Great nickname, Dan Argueta, the Determined.
That's a terrible nickname.
I like the Tim Means and Fialho fight a lot. That's a purist's fight right there. They're not two household names. Tim Means is a veteran's veteran. Tim Means is the kind of fighter who you could play the game of, like, what other career does this guy look like he could do?
You say this all the time about poor Tim Means.
Do I? Have I said it before?
Yes, 100%.
I'm sorry. Oh, God, I'm turning into my father. Just forget that I say things and I say them again 5 months later.
I'm not knocking you. I just felt bad for poor Tim Means.
Dog, I find myself doing shit like my father all the time now that I'm getting older. I just do shit and I stop myself sometimes. I go, well, I am my father now. No, that's just who I am.
It's DNA. Okay, let's jump in here. Here we go. The first fight that we are going to discuss is going down in the featherweight division, and Charles Air Jourdain taking on Ricardo Ramos. So, Air Jourdain, 27 years old, out of Quebec, Canada. He is 14-6 with 1 draw, 12 finishes out of his 14 wins. Most recently, scoring a UD over the Gracie family legend in Kron Gracie. Well, a legend more so in jiu-jitsu, but not so much in MMA. He will be standing across from, is it Ricardo Ramos?
Ramos, yeah.
Okay. The 28-year-old out of Sao Paulo, Brazil. He's 16-4 with 4 knockouts and 7 submissions. Also coming off of a nice knockout victory over Danny Chavez back in June of last year. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick of Jourdain versus Ramos.
I love this fight. Two guys at really similar points. I think the winner really will show something here. Odds are tight. Jourdain is the favorite. He's minus 145. Ramos is plus 120 as the dog, so small underdog. The heights are the same. There is 3 inches of reach on the Ramos side of things. And it's a hard one to pick. They've both shown a ton of skills. They both have been a little up and down at times. Ramos has definitely shown how dangerous he can be. Obviously, we saw that nasty spinning back elbow where he KO'd Danny Chavez in his last fight. Hasn't fought in a minute because he had a little bit of trouble making 145. I forget what he weighed in at when he tried to fight his last fight. It was like 153 or something absurd, which is wild for a guy that used to fight at 135. But he's back now. Hopefully he will be making weight so we can enjoy this fight. But I am going to go with Jourdain here. I think it's a really close fight that could be a firefight, and Jourdain is the one that kind of strikes me as being a bit more physical and even more so a bit more comfortable. I think he just carries a bit more of that veteran poise in what I think will be a firefight, and I think I'm going to lean on that. Like, skill for skill, it's really close, but I think Jourdain is the one who cannot be rattled in there, who can make the adjustments, and who can take at least 2 of these rounds. So I will say Charles Jourdain, UD.
Omar.
Yeah, I got to say, I really like Charles Jourdain in this fight. I think Ricardo Ramos is a decent fighter. I think he's got a lot of power in his hands. But I just think Charles Jourdain is just a little bit slicker. I think he's a little bit more technical in there. I think he definitely has there is definitely a world where Jourdain gets caught with a big strike. Could be an elbow, could be a punch, could be a kick. But I just think Charles Jourdain's striking in his stand-up is really good, man. I think his defense is good. I think his striking is good. I think that he'd be able to stand in there with Ricardo and really put it on him. I think if the fight goes down to the ground, I think that might be where we see a little bit more from Ramos than we would from Jourdain. I think Jourdain has a bad habit of being complacent on the ground sometimes, especially from a bottom position. So in that case, just from a points perspective, I think he could potentially lose in that sense. But I do think Jourdain has a little bit more avenues to success, I would imagine, especially, like I said, on the feet. So I will go with Charles Jourdain here by unanimous decision.
I concur, Doctor. Honestly, guys, this is more of a fan pick for me because I'm a Charles Jourdain fan. So I'm going to say Jourdain is going to knock him out. And I'll say that it's going to happen in the 3rd round. And there you have it.
Bold.
Okay, next fight up. Here we go. Bryan Battle taking on A.J. Fletcher. It's going down 3 rounds in the welterweight division. Bryan Pooh Bear Battle is the 28-year-old fighting out of Charlotte, North Carolina. At this point, he's a 9-2 middleweight with 7 finishes, 3 knockouts, and 4 submissions, coming off of a first-round knockout victory over Gabe Green back in May of this year at UFC on ABC 4. His opponent, A.J. Fletcher, the Ghost, is the 26-year-old out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 10-2 as a pro. Funny, his nickname is the Ghost because usually you don't see ghosts, but you can never miss this giant, jacked man. You know?
He's not giant, but he is jacked.
Well, giant in the sense that he's jacked. Shut up. You know what?
No, because he's known for being kind of tiny as a welterweight. So that's why I was saying that.
I
But
just
he's
mean
jacked.
that he's
Yes.
just like,
Yes.
if you were at Starbucks, you'd be like, Jesus, that guy's fucking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd be like, no way that guy can turn around completely with the way how big he is. It's not possible.
I'm aware. He's like 5'9" or something as a welterweight, right?
I don't remember. I just know
Actually, I have it right here. He's 5'10".
Yeah.
That's fucking normal. What do you mean?
No, I think it's his reach that they always. Wait, I have this. I mean, Battle's reach is long, but you'll hear the reach difference in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. He might
Why
have
don't you
T-Rex
just go
arms.
straight
I
into
think
it, Mark?
he
Go
has
straight
T-Rex
into it.
arms. I think that's what it is for Fletcher.
Yeah, go straight into it.
Me? Okay. So Bryan Battle is the favorite. He's minus 185. AJ Fletcher is plus 155 as the dog. Battle is 3 inches taller, and he will have a 10-inch reach advantage, which is absolutely crazy.
That is crazy.
I don't really understand why Bryan Battle is fighting AJ Fletcher, to be honest.
Me either.
Battle's won 4 of 5 in the UFC. He just KO'd Gabe Green in seconds. And they give him a guy who's 1-2 in the octagon thus far in AJ Fletcher. I don't really get it. And I'm not saying Fletcher doesn't have talent because he's shown that he does. He did look good in his last fight, but the resume just doesn't dictate that he should be fighting Bryan Battle right now. So I don't know. But that aside, I do think Bryan Battle can get this done and that he will handle Fletcher. Fletcher's physical. He's strong. Mike jacked. He a bit of everything, definitely. But Battle's just so much bigger, and he's the more proven fighter, and I think he can use that range. I think he can fight a smart fight, pick Fletcher apart, break him down a bit. Fletcher tends to force things when that starts happening, and I think eventually he will present an opportunity for Bryan Battle to find a finish, and I'm going to say it is a round 2 submission for Bryan Battle.
Omar.
Yeah, I would also have to agree. I'm not really sure how AJ Fletcher got this fight. Maybe it was availability. Maybe it was how the cards were dealt. I have no idea. It seems really weird to me, too. I will say that Bryan Battle is one of these guys that I feel like nobody expects anything from this kid. Like, I don't think they look at him and see anything but just another guy coming through the octagon. And I've said, even from Tough, that this kid has a ton of heart. He doesn't have... I think what he does miss, at least visually, is that raw talent, right? Sometimes you can watch a guy and just see he's got the coordination of his body and mind. He's got, all these little technical things that make his style look good, his form look good, and you would imagine that he can apply that in a fight. Some guys that look really good when they're training or when they're striking, when they're holding pads, aren't always the best fighters in practice, right? Sometimes that's not always a great translation, but for Bryan Battle is one of these guys that looks like he has worked hard for every bit of talent that he has. True. And sometimes those guys are even more, they're even scarier than some of the guys who have the raw talent. These guys know what they worked for. They know how good they are. They know where their opportunities lie, which I think a lot of guys who have raw talent never admit to themselves. And I think guys like Bryan Battle can be a real problem, especially because of how often they are underestimated. So give me Bryan Battle here. I do think that AJ Fletcher is going to fade later in the fight. I do think it'll be a little bit later than the second round, so I'm going to go with the third round submission.
Okay. Great points. I'm not going to say it any better than you guys, so I agree. I think Bryan Battle is going to be overall the more talented fighter in there, and I'll say that he's going to win in a decision. UD for Pooh Bear. All right. In the women's strawweight division, big fight here. Marina Rodriguez taking on Michelle, the karate hottie, Waterson-Gomez. Rodriguez, the 36-year-old out of Brazil, 16-3 as a pro. Looking to get back in the win column very badly after losing back-to-back fights to Lemos and Jandiroba. Michelle Waterson, the karate hottie, one of the more popular female fighters that the UFC has ever seen. 37 years old, out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. 18-11 as a pro with 12 finishes, 9 of them submissions. Also, very, very badly looking to get back in the win column on a 3-fight losing streak and having lost 5 of her last 6. Omar, start us off. Give us your take and your pick of Rodriguez versus Waterson-Gomez.
Yeah, dude, it's been a rough go for Michelle Waterson-Gomez. She's won 6 fights in the octagon and she has lost 7 total. So she's, not even right now a 50-50 fighter technically. And it has been a rough go. She has won. She's been in a lot of split decisions in recent memory.
Yeah, I thought she won her last fight for what it's worth.
Yeah, the Luana Pinheiro one.
Pinheiro one, yeah.
Yeah. But she's had some rough goes too. Amanda Lemos put the beats on her. Marina Rodriguez, the first time I thought was a really competitive fight, but I do think that she lost that fight. So there's, I think there's still some life to Michelle Waterson-Gomez, but I do think there is a ceiling. I don't necessarily expect her to crack anything wild. And I think that's really the main reason why I'm going to be picking on Marina Rodriguez here. I just think that her aspirations in the division, her momentum in the division, kind of where we see her going forward, I think it's just a little bit further than where Michelle can reach. So I'm going to go with Marina Rodriguez here by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I agree. I think at this point in their careers, even though they're not that far apart in age at all, Waterson-Gomez, I think, has more miles on her body. And also stylistically, I think Rodriguez is going to be a bit busier. It's a tough one, though. I think this has the potential to be a great fight because Waterson-Gomez is very well-rounded as well. Comes in with a lot of skills. She's not afraid to take this fight to the ground if she wants to, but I'm going to say that Marina Rodriguez takes it in terms of striking prowess on the feet. I mean, her nickname is the Karate Hottie, so she's no slouch on the feet as well in Michelle Waterson-Gomez. But I'm going to go with Rodriguez. I'll say by UD. Mark?
So Marina's a pretty big favorite. She's minus 310. Michelle is plus 250. 3 inches of height and 3 inches of reach on Marina's side of things. And yeah, it wasn't that long ago that these two fought the first time. Not even 2.5 years ago. I mean, Michelle has only fought 2 other girls in between that fight. So, little bit of a random booking to be happening again already, but I guess I'm here for it. And as Omar said, it was competitive the first time. Marina did win the decision pretty clearly, but it was a good fight. And I think this will be competitive again, but I think Marina can resist most of the grappling attempts from Michelle, and I think she will be able to edge her on the feet, similar to how you guys have said. Her Muay Thai is dangerous. She's the longer fighter. I think she lands the harder shots. And she needs it. You know, she's dropped 2 in a row. I'm a little nervous picking her because I picked her in both of those to beat Lemos and Janchadova. Obviously, they didn't go well. So I hope she is not falling off here. I mean, Michelle needs it just as bad as her. So, you know, hopefully we see a fun fight here. Hopefully they're both pushing for it. But I will agree, and I will say Marina by UD.
Okay, moving on to the co-main event of this UFC Fight Night. Very, very fun fight going down in the featherweight division. Bryce Thug Nasty Mitchell taking on Dan 50K Ige. Bryce Mitchell, the 28-year-old out of Sherwood, Arkansas, 15-1 as a pro with 9 submissions. Most recently, suffering his very first loss at the hands of the very talented Ilia Topuria back in December. Dan 50K Ige, 32 years old, out of Honolulu, Hawaii, 17-6 as a pro with 10 finishes. Back-to-back wins coming into this weekend over Damon Jackson and Nate Landwehr. Mark, start us off. Give us the odds to take and your pick in that order, please, and thank you.
Bryce Mitchell, the favorite. He is minus 210. Dan Ige is plus 170. 3 inches of height for Bryce, but 1 inch of reach for Ige. And I like this fight. Ige is a talented fighter. I thought he had one of his best performances to date in his last fight against Nate Landwehr. And his hands are crispy enough that they will be a factor in this fight in any exchange. But I'm on Bryce. I think he is being hugely slept on simply because he lost to Ilia Topuria, who's unreal. And I think he's going to take this fight. We've seen Ige get out-grappled before, and I think we are going to see just that again. Bryce is relentless. I think he finds the takedowns, keeps control, out-grapples Ige, maybe even en route to finding a submission. But I think I'm going to say it sees the cards, and I'll say Bryce wins this by UD. But I think we get a pretty big bounce-back type performance from Bryce Mitchell here.
Omar.
This is actually a really tough one for me, man. You know, both of these guys have very different approaches to how they fight. And both of them are very good at their respective approaches. Dan Ige is definitely a guy who wants to keep it on the feet. He wants to move around. He wants to use that lateral movement and footwork. He wants to put the volume on you. Again, he's not necessarily a pressure fighter in terms of walking you forward and forcing you to move back, but he's definitely not a guy that's going to allow you to kind of set in one angle and just be there. Dan Ige loves working his angles and loves moving around and cutting off the cage as much as he can. So I think we'll see a lot of that. The thing from Bryce Mitchell, though, are going to be the takedowns. That's going to be the story of the fight. Can Dan Ige stop the takedowns? Can he do it for 3 rounds? And then if he can, what can he do to Bryce Mitchell in between the moments where he's shooting for where Mitchell is shooting for a takedown and trying to put him on the ground? So as much as I do like Bryce Mitchell from a fight perspective, I think the kid's a little fucking Looney Tunes in real life, but that's for another day. Dan Ige, I think, has the ability to win that fight. I think his experience, I want to say his experience will hopefully guide him through that fight to win. And like I said, as long as I think he can keep it off the ground, I think he can win this fight. Even if he gets it down to the ground every, once or twice, I hope Bryce Mitchell can't hold him down for an entire round. It's very possible that he can. I think we've seen Dan Ige have have gotten the better of him on the ground before from other fighters. But I think he'll be able to take care of it in this fight. So I'm going to go with Dan Ige here by unanimous decision.
Wow. It's just such an interesting matchup. Pretty much every fight that Bryce Mitchell fights is an interesting matchup because at featherweight, I feel that, well, yes, he was sick in his fight with Topuria, but I think even if he was in tip-top health, it would have been pretty much the same result. I really do. Topuria exposed something in Bryce Mitchell. I think that Bryce Mitchell is not the most physical featherweight. For 145 pounds, he's not the biggest guy. He's not the most impressive physique. I'm very worried for Bryce Mitchell that he also might get out-physicaled by Dan Ige. But that grappling, man, Topuria had his own, I think, kind of counter-grappling and like just man strength and athleticism. What's so funny?
Man strength.
Yeah.
I liked it. No one's hating on you. Keep going.
So anyway, it's a close one. Tough to pick, but I'm going to go with Bryce Mitchell. I'll say he finds a submission late in the fight. I'll say third round for Bryce.
I wanted you to go Ige there to give me another chance to make up some ground.
I'm a little surprised that he's that much of a favorite.
I am too, actually.
I thought it was going to be much
2-1. Yeah,
I mean,
2-1's a lot.
like I said, I think it's a close fight on paper.
Yeah. Definitely,
All right.
I would not have put either one of them in the 200s for me.
Yeah, fair.
Okay, main event time. Let's do this.
It's a fucking wild fight.
Dude, it is. In the lightweight division, a very consequential bout between Rafael Ataman Fiziev and Mateusz Gamrot. Fiziev is 30 years old and fighting out of Kazakhstan. He's 12-2 as a pro with 9 finishes, 8 of them knockouts. Looking to get back at the win column after suffering only his second loss, a majority decision against Justin Gaethje. He'll be standing across from the very talented Polish fighter Mateusz Gamrot, 22-2 with 1 no contest, 7 knockouts, 5 submissions, coming off of a split decision victory over Jalen Turner back in March. So both of these men coming off of very close fights that could have gone either way. Mark, start us off. Give us the odds, the take, the pick.
Who do you guys think is favored?
Fiziev?
Honestly, man, I would think it would be Fiziev.
It is. He is minus 160. Gamrot is plus 130.
See, that's the line for Bryce Mitchell right there. That's what it should have been.
Yeah, that line for this fight is pretty much what I was imagining.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 inches of height for Gamrot, but 1 inch of reach for Fiziev. This is a great main event. Really interesting matchup between two talented fighters. Obviously different styles, which makes it fun. But personally, I just feel so much more comfortable with Fiziev here. His recent performances have just impressed me so much more than Gamrot's have. I still don't think Gamrot beat Sarukian. He got somewhat handled by Beneil Dariush. And then, yes, he did beat Jalen Turner, but it wasn't easy. He had to eat some shots in that fight to do it. Whereas on the flip side, Fiziev KO'd Moicano. He KO'd Riddell. He KO'd RDA and stuffed a bajillion takedowns in that fight. And then you could even argue he beat Justin Gaethje in a war. So, to me, he has just been so much more impressive in his recent string of fights. And I know styles make fights, and that if Gamrot can get Fiziev to the ground, everything changes. But I trust Fiziev's takedown defense at this point, man. What he showed against RDA was really impressive. I'm not saying it'll never hit the mat, but he even if it does, he showed how hard it is to hold him down. So, yep. I don't know. As good and as tricky as Gamrot's wrestling is, I think the advantage that Fiziev has in the striking is just so much more of a factor than what Gamrot has in that department. And I think plenty of this fight will take place on the feet, and that Mateusz Gamrot is going to be eating some shots while it's there. And because this is 5 rounds, I'm actually going to go as far as saying that we see the first time Gamrot ever gets finished in his career. He's a bit reckless on the feet. We saw how much Turner landed on him. He's not the first guy to land on Gamrot like that. It's honestly a little surprising he's ever been finished. I mean, it's because he's very good. He's only got, what does he have, like 2 losses? But he's a little reckless, and he's a little bit there to be hit, and Fiziev's a friggin' sniper. So I'm going to say he finds it. I will take Rafael Fiziev by round 4 TKO.
Whew. Omar?
Believe it or not, we have the exact same pick. I am also going with Rafael Fiziev by 4th round knockout. I do think that the damage is going to accumulate over time. I trust Fiziev's hands and his legs more. You guys know I'm super biased when it comes to guys who are nasty at fucking Muay Thai, and Fiziev is probably going to be that guy for me for a little while. I love watching that man fight. I think his technique is on point. I think his flow is on point. And I think as long as Gamrot stands with him, which Gamrot will do, he'll definitely shoot for something at some point, but he's not necessarily afraid to strike. Even when maybe he should be, but he's not. And I think once he starts standing with Fiziev throws so much power on a consistent basis without getting tired that it's amazing to watch. And dude, honestly, man, that comes from the Muay Thai. That is a normal thing to happen in Muay Thai. Like, dudes find whatever their 50% power is, and they can throw their 50% power for a few rounds, right? Like, you rarely see people go crazy, crazy ham in Muay Thai unless they've really got somebody like fucked up somewhere. But for the most part, man, people are throwing with a good amount of force and a good amount of energy consistently throughout a fight. Where I feel like in MMA, especially with all the different techniques and all the different level changes that go on, you'll see guys fade. You'll see guys, throw a lot less power over time. Generally with guys who fight Muay Thai or have trained Muay Thai for a long time, especially guys who've been in there professionally, you'll rarely see the power diminish that much. But yeah, anyway, my point being that I just trust Fiziev over a long period of time, especially when it comes to the power. So I'm going to go again with Fiziev, 4th round KO.
Wow. Remind me the odds one more time, Mark.
-160 Fiziev, +130 Gamrot.
So pretty close.
Yes.
I love that. Yeah, I do think that this has the makings of being another lightweight classic between two talented guys. And pretty opposed stylistically. In this case, I think that Gamrot's going to keep rising in this case. I think that he's going to tough it out over Fiziev, and I think that he's going to weather the storm of Fiziev's sort of barrage of strikes, and he's going to find a way to get this into a grappling match, as he often does, and I think that his strengths are going to shine in this fight. So I'm going to take Mateusz Gamrot to hand Fiziev his 2nd consecutive decision loss. And there you have it. It would be huge. It would be huge. This is a big one either way.
Super random. Have either of you ever watched the show Vikings?
No. I've heard of it.
No, I know what it is, though, but I've never seen it.
I have always, when I'm watching Fiziev, I have always had this weird feeling of, like, familiarity. And I'm always like, why do I feel like I know this guy more than I know this guy? And I realized today that he looks exactly like the main character of the show Vikings. And now
I know exactly who you're talking about because I've seen the poster so many times and like commercials and shit. So I know the one dude that you're actually talking about on that fucking show.
Yeah. They have like the same beard, same hair, everything. And
does the dude in the Vikings though? Does he have a little ponytail coming out of the little?
At times, he had a lot of different looks in that show. Like he changed his shit all the time. But yes,
I see it. I see it. Oh my god, I see it.
Oh, you pulled it up?
Funny.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. How funny! Holy shit! It's uncanny.
Wow. Even like the eyes, the whole deal.
Yeah. All right, folks.